Господин председатель,
Mr. President, we are grateful to the Special Representative El Ghassim for the briefing on the MINUSMA mission and the situation in the country. We listened very carefully to Bouare Samaki, and we welcome the participation of the Mali PR in this meeting. We are convinced that in order to overcome the existing challenges will only be possible for the Malians provided there is internal political stability in the country. And we can see that the transition authorities very seriously intend to gradually resolve the accumulated issues. Restoring the constitutional order is, of course, one of the priority issues. And during the reporting period, we have heard the Malian authorities repeat that Bamako is committed to implementing this. The fact that the Malian authorities conduct a broad national process to prepare for the elections, and the fact that they have created an extended working group on this, and also they established a dialogue group so as to relaunch negotiations with the AU and ECOWAS, all of this shows that they have a constructive approach and that the current authorities do not have a hidden agenda. We do hope that in the near future, the negotiations between Bamako and ECOWAS will bear fruit. And we call upon both sides to continue dialogue and the mediators to continue making their efforts. We share the concern expressed by the Malian authorities when they were talking about the worsening situation in the northern areas of the countries, where because of the French military withdrawal, there's now a vacuum in the security area. We hear from Bamako that just like as was the case in the fall last year, the decision to fully withdraw Barkhane was made without consultations with the Mali side, and this is a violation of bilateral agreements, and we think that this is extremely irresponsible. We also share the assessments we have in the Secretary General's report when he talks about the negative consequences of actions by France and its EU partners for the implementation of the MINUSMA mandate, in particular when it comes to the risk it brings for the security of peacekeepers. It's also not clear what the withdrawal of Barkhane and Takuba will, what kind of impact it will have on combat readiness for the joint Sahel 5 forces, who are to be in the avant-garde of fighting terrorism in the Saharan Sahel. At the same time, I would like to recall that what is happening in Mali is a victim of your intervention in Libya in 2011. It is since then that the region has become an area of active banditism and terrorism. The fact that in 2013 you decided to extend assistance is certainly something that merits respect. But if you look at the outcome of this assistance of yours, then you can see that up to 2021 the situation had not been improving. And now, without having accomplished anything and using a trumped-up pretext, you are dropping Mali, the country which we know is a key country for stability and security in that part of Africa. On the conditions when the Malians basically are left alone and facing cross-border challenges, serious ones, the transition authorities are trying to help their people on their own and also through interaction with partners and organizations from other countries. The Malian authorities have the sovereign right to decide who they want to work with. We welcome the intensification of counter-terrorism operations by the Malian armed forces and the successes in this regard, as a result of which a number of settlements in the center of the country have been freed. We also pay tribute to the Malian armed forces and express condolences to the families of those who perished, both the military and civilians, and of course the UN peacekeepers. We call upon everyone to respect the memory of all victims of terrorism. At the same time, we note that the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Mali are committed to human rights, international humanitarian law, and that Bamako is making efforts to investigate those incidences where human rights are being violated. The information campaign about the so-called Russian mercenaries affairs we view as part of some kind of a sordid geopolitical game. Mr. President, we would like to point out that the Russian-Mali cooperation is something that has that hails back a long time ago. Russia has been extending assistance to Mali on the basis of bilateral agreements. We work to make sure that we increase their combat readiness, that we train their military and law enforcement. Currently, we have about 200 military and 9 policemen who are being trained in Russia. We are convinced that the stabilization of Mali is not being helped by the regional sanctions imposed on it or by the restrictions put on by a number of Western countries. They can only compound the already very difficult situation, not to mention the fact that they worsen the daily life of ordinary Malians, not just Malians, but also the people in other countries in the region. Under these conditions, Bamako and its neighbors will find it ever more difficult to deal with the challenges of the country, chief among them terrorism. We have heard today yet once again accusations against Russia stating that we are supposedly provoking famine in the Sahel. Let me recall that some time ago, climate was the culprit responsible for everything. Now it's Russia. Mali, at the same time, has numerous sanctions levied on it. The borders are closed, the trade routes are blocked. The people are suffering, the people of the entire region. They do not have their most basic income. But please take a look at the slogans that the ordinary people come out when they come out in protest. They do mention Russia, but not at all in the way that Western countries would like to see. In this regard, I would like to yet once again note that the consequences of unprecedented anti-Russian sanctions, which resulted to the disruption of all logistical and financial chains and links in the world, show to most countries in the world, including the countries in Africa, how important it is to defend your own political independence and your own financial capacities to overcome the colonial inheritance and to give up on the remaining colonial mechanisms. In conclusion, I would like to say that Russia will continue extending support to Malians, including through collective efforts to help stabilize the situation in the country. At the same time, we ask Bamako to have a balanced approach to crisis settlement. In the original version of my statement, I was going to say that we expect that the traditional partners of Mali will find an opportunity to reject the logic of being sermonizing and superior and use the language of sanction. And within the framework of respectful dialogue with Bamako, we'll find a way of overcoming differences. But having heard the discussions today, I'm compelled to admit that this will probably not something that will happen, and the appeal for an equitable, mutually beneficial and respectful cooperation is something that the Western countries will not heed yet once again. I thank you for your attention.